Hello everybody, welcome back to part 2 of RWBY, Rambling Rant Review, Chapter 12, Volume 3. Yes, I'm wearing the same shirt because for what you guys might have seemed like several days relative to your time frame has only been a few minutes for me. So when we left off last review, Pyrrha was just killed by Cinder, and RWBY released her Angel Eyes attack, and we transition to just that white screen with voices in the background. Crow and somebody else I don't recognize. But basically what we learn from them talking is that Crow has saved RWBY, who was passed out, and the CCT has been destroyed. Communications are out. The entire world is in a communications blackout. We come back to RWBY waking up, and our first fully animated look at RWBY's dad, Taiyang Zhao Long.
RWBY! You're awake.
And that voice, ladies and gentlemen, is Church.
Son of a bitch!
I mean, Bernie Burns. Taiyang fills RWBY in on what has transpired, letting us know that the school is a loss, and Yang is, well, okay. Also, that the dragon is now frozen on top of the tower, but still attracting more Grimm. So, like what? Did the Grimm just kind of show up and hang out with him going,
"Hey Glenn, I heard you couldn't even take out a little girl in a red hood."
I was frozen today!
Whoa, fine, whatever.
Notice how Taiyang deflects here, as he did earlier while talking about Yang?
What do you mean?
Look, that's not important right now. We can talk about it later.
It's very interesting, and it has me thinking of a theory, but I'm going to come back to that later. Crow comes in, kicking Taiyang out to talk with RWBY. During their talk, she remembers what happens and what she did. Eventually, they go into RWBY's newly unlocked powers.
Silver Eyes. You're special, RWBY.
Mentioning two very interesting things. One, that her mother had the same silver eyes as her, thus taking her off the list of maidens, because that would be kind of OP having silver eye powers and that at the same time. And secondly, these silver-eyed warriors were around before Huntsmen and Kingdoms. Now, at the very beginning of Volume 1, Episode 1, it is said, Huntsmen and Kingdoms arose when humans found dust. So that means that the silver-eyed warriors were around even before elemental dust was used as we know it. So what could be that powerful, that early in a world's history, before the dust technology was invented? Also with silver eyes. Perhaps a god? In Greek mythology of our world, Athena is a god of wisdom, courage, justice, and war. But only war if every other option has been exhausted. Sound like somebody you know? Maybe a main character? And according to the Greek poet Homer, Athena was Glaukopis, which translate from two words, glaukos, which means silvery, and opus, which means eyes. But the word together can also be translated into gleaming or shining. So, silver eyes that gleam and shine. Sounds pretty damn close to me, don't you think? But this is just the power set I'm going for. The parts about wisdom and courage, I think, she inherited from her mother, the original silver-eyed warrior. Well, not original, but original to us. So what if Summer was the one based off of Athena, and then she passed that power down to her daughter? That would be more interesting for one reason. That reason is the Greek goddess Athena was invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Those two are the parents of Achilles, which means that if my theory isn't total potato, that Summer parallels are true, there's a possibility that RWBY's mother might have also known Pyrrha's parents, since Pyrrha is based off of Achilles. That she was at their wedding. It's not that big of a stretch if you think about it. And outside of the mythological part that I was going off of there, imagine this. Both of her parents could be huntsmen too. That would explain all of her grooming to be such a warrior and destiny. And also think about Ruby's parents on Team Stark. Team Stark and Pyrrha's parents' team could have met up at some time. Heck, they could have even gone to the same school. With that line of thinking, the worst that comes out of this is that either Jean or Ruby are going to end up having to be the ones to tell Pyrrha's parents she's gone. Since the CCT is down, they don't even know yet that their daughter is gone. Now, I know this is all a big stretch, and I gotta admit, it's not my only Silver Eyes theory, but it's the one that fits the most with Pyrrha's Greek background as well. So after these revelations from Crow, him even letting Ruby know now that he worked for Osmond the entire time, he kind of also eggs her on to go after the bad guys who have made their way to Haven.
Our enemy's trail leads all the way to Haven. That'd be quite a trip for a pipsqueak like you.
That wink, just look at that. That's basically him saying, go for it. During the last bit of this scene, I really enjoyed this mirror shot. It's a very nice way of having Crow as the main subject, yet still letting us see Ruby's reaction at the same time. It's also a very good representation of emotional self-reflection as Ruby looks at herself in the mirror at the end. On a technical note, I'm curious. I wonder if there was a mirror programmed in there to actually do the reflection, or if in this scene they animated a second Ruby model there.
One more thing!
I just want to mention, it really has nothing to do with anything, but some of the paintings on the wall, especially this one, reminds me of, and I'm going to butcher this name, Zhangjiajie Mountains in China, which were also the inspiration for the world of Avatar, the other Avatar. Now, I wonder if we'll get to see any places like this later on as they travel Remnant. There are also other nice paintings here. The only other one that really kind of caught my eye were the crows here, because obvious reasons. This next scene is probably the most bloody heartbreaking. Ruby sees Yang for the first time since Beacon, and Yang almost doesn't acknowledge Ruby's presence at first. Look at this hug. Yang doesn't even hug back. You still got one arm. You can hug your sister a little bit. So Yang begrudgingly speaks to Ruby, and she fills us in that Weiss's father has forced her back to Atlas since everyone thinks there was a new great war on, and he thinks that Atlas will be the safest place for her, and that Blake ran away. At least according to Yang, she did. So the worst part of this scene, overall, not just, I'm losing it, I'm sorry. It's this final, I love you, from Ruby, with no response from Yang. Damn. You can tell. Yang is hurting so much here, in more ways than one. She's lost her friends, and most of all, she's lost her pride, like sane pride. Think of it. She was once a social butterfly, and now she's been humiliated, not once, but twice, but thrice. Just this volume. First, think Mercury and Emerald's Decepticons ruining her reputation, which the world still probably believes to be truthful because there's no CCT, so there's no way to clear her name. Adam one-shotting her after her being built up as so OP the entire volume. And then Blake leaving without a word. Sung had to be the one to tell Yang that she had left after the fact. Bumblebee has been a daring duo since Volume 1. They were the first ones to lay eyes on each other in the Emerald Forest, not to mention Yang going out of her way in Volume 2 to bring Blake back to her senses while she was pushing herself too hard. That's gotta feel like the biggest betrayal to her after all. All after that, she still left. Although my theory is that Blake left actually to protect Yang and the others to keep Adam chasing her and away from her friends. But for Yang, the pessimism has settled in. Lastly, I don't count this as a main hit to her pride. This is more of a theory than anything, but I want to address it because I think this could happen next volume. The way that Yang is cold to Ruby, especially with the unanswered I love you, does anyone else think that Yang might be jealous of Ruby? Really, if you think about it, their dynamic, their sibling relationship has been changed so much over the last few volumes. With Yang starting out as the overprotective sister, proud of her talented younger sister, to them being equals, and now RWBY is the chosen one. Yang must have heard from Crow and her dad what RWBY has done. In the end, Yang has lost everything, where RWBY has gained this new power on top of already being talented for her young age. Crap, now that I think of it, like, what if Yang even feels that, like, her own father loves RWBY more than her because he is reminded of Summer because of RWBY? If you keep putting all this together, you see a pattern that could lead to a rift in their relationship. Here we get a great transition, not just of a scene, but from time. From fall to winter. Jean, Nora, and Ren join with RWBY to make the trip to Haven to pursue the enemy. God, I love this scene. They could have ended the episode right here, and I would have been content. This is damn near perfect, like the ending of the Fellowship of the Ring. I know the story is 60 years old, but hey, spoiler warning. Gandalf goes missing, Boromir dies, then what's left of the Fellowship continues on their quest to save the world with the beautiful music in the background and the tracking jib shot cutting from scene to scene. It's just perfect. But the main difference here from Lord of the Rings is that RWBY ends with this voiceover.
It's true that a simple spark can ignite hope.
The same voice of the narrator from the beginning of Volume 1. And at first, it kind of sounds inspirational. But then, the tone changes and turns malicious. As she speaks, we are shown Glinda and Blake still near Beacon. Glinda trying to rebuild what seems to be left, and Blake possibly patrolling the perimeter. Then, we get our first look at Weiss's father. And I gotta say, meh? It's okay. I don't want to say it's boring yet, because Ironwood was kind of generic when he first started out, but then he evolved into a better character. So I'm going to reserve judgment on him still, at least until we get a 3D render, and until we hear his voice, at least until then. RWBY visits her mother's memorial, which helps tie things up in the hero cycle nicely for this part of the overarching story, as also, it was the first and last thing she did in this volume. And finally, we get to see the face of the mystery voice of the overarching villain, Salem. That's it. We go to credits. God, I love her reveal, her speech. We don't know much about Salem outside of her name that was actually revealed in the credits. So there's not too much we could theorize about her. But let's try and start at the very beginning. In Volume 1, as the narrator, she shows that she knows much of humanity's past that people have actually forgotten, such as the rise of man, dust, and the Grimm. Now, we can also see that Salem is up to date with current events, even hinting that she already knows about RWBY's powers, capping it all off as if she's talking to Ozpin. This leads to several very interesting lines of thought. One, Ozpin's alive. He might not be captive as we don't see him there, but Salem is convinced that he is. Also, when Salem was narrating for Volume 1, she also says, "You may prepare your monuments." She's no longer just narrating to us, the audience. At that point, she is talking to someone in specific. I think even back then in Volume 1, it's Ozpin. She is talking to Ozpin, pushing me even further to believe that her and Ozpin have a long and sordid past. Cause if anything in this show screams immortal evil incarnate, it's Salem. Further pushing again that Ozpin has been around longer than we think. Such a dark and foreboding landscape behind her too, completely inhospitable, looking to humans. I bet Grimm lived there quite easily. A great, dark, supernatural aesthetic. Now for Salem herself, I don't have too many theories, aside from the very quick theory that Salem, the town, Salem Witch Trials, making her possibly a witch, her relationship with Ozpin, which can quickly lead into the Wizard of Oz, Witch, Wizard of Oz, Wicked Witch of the... On top of that, while we're talking about Wizard of Oz, remember those scenes I asked you to remember about Taiyang Zhao Long? How he was hesitant about telling Ruby the truth. And then also this scene here where he runs after her. He is afraid of what dangers she may face on her way to Haven. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you my theory that Taiyang Xiaolong is based off of the Cowardly Lion. That's right. There's our trifecta right there. Crow, the Scarecrow. Ironwood, the Tin Man. And Taiyang Xiaolong, the Cowardly Lion. I really like this ending, if you guys have not been able to tell. I know I tore apart Volume 2's ending with, them teasing too much after the end credits with Adam and Raven. But this time, we simply get Crow watching over Team Ranger, Ruby, Nora, Jean, and Ren, while wielding Ozpin's cane, then leaping off the cliff to reveal a crow flying off in the direction of the kids. Now, is that actually Crow himself with a power we never knew about, or is it just a symbolization? Remember back in chapter 3 of this volume where I made the comment about the Raven watching Crow and Winter's fight, and what that could mean? Well, I think I might have stumbled onto another family bloodline semblance we didn't know about it. Think! If the Shnees have glyph and summons, why can't the Brawens have a secondary ability like that? It's perfect for somebody like Crow, who's basically a spy, and Raven, who I'm kind of guessing is a spy but undercover with the enemy. It's perfect. So it's either a familiar or them actually turning into those creatures. Lastly, Ozpin's cane. Crow himself said,
With Oz gone, I'll have to pick up where he left off.
Him holding the cane is a symbolic passing of the torch in more ways than one. The obvious one is that he's going to have to take over where Ozpin left off with the well-being of the leftover maidens and Ruby. Then, in the not-so-obvious sense, you could kind of say this was almost preordained by their namesakes. In the Wonderful Wizard of Oz books, the Wizard of Oz leaves the Emerald City throne to the Scarecrow to protect until the true leader of Emerald City arrives, who, while on the throne, Scarecrow doubts himself, eventually becoming known as the smartest man in Oz. This time, I really need to give Rooster Teeth credit for the pacing for this episode. Not too little, like the end of Volume 1, and not too much like the end of Volume 2 was just right. RWBY as a show has grown so much, and even with the loss of its main visionary Monty everyone at Rooster Teeth has proven that they will pull out all the stops to make sure his dream for this show is realized, and put out there a story that is not only amazing visually, but also addictively intriguing in its writing. I don't think we could have asked for anything better. Okay, well, that's all from me, everyone. Thank you for watching this epic two-parter. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, this is just my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm actually a bit of a crackpot. If you know anything that I don't know or just feel like debating, feel free to leave a comment below. You can also follow me at SwarlyU on Twitter and the same name on Tumblr. And until next time, everybody, good night!